Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Awards Watch podcast. I'm your host, editor in chief of Awards Watch, Erik Anderson. We haven't talked a whole lot of Oscar predictions recently, and I think it is time. We are in a post Toronto and New York Film Festival lineup announcement, and just ahead of Telluride and Venice kicking off. So now is the time. And joining me once again, or as always, I guess, executive editor Ryan McQuade.
I'm always here. I'm
You
just
are
in,
always
I'm stuck
here.
in these podcast feeds.
It is. And associate editor Sophia Ciminello.
Hi guys.
Yeah, let's I want to just go and dive right in because we do have all of these lineups and we know what's at Venice. And we'll be doing a Telluride preview podcast soon, but all of this information gives us a lot of information. But what I wanted to ask you both first before we go into Oscar stuff, because it is related, I want to ask each of you about what a festival run means for a film, because we have a few titles that are doing 3, 4, 5 festivals this season. And that will usually tell us that the studio really wants this film to be seen by as many people around the world as possible before we even get to an Oscar campaign. And then on the other side, we have a few that are just doing 1 or 2, and it's more sparse. And what does that mean? So, Ryan, first to you, what is your takeaway from a film that has a very long runway of festival appearances?
Well, it's interesting because over the last couple of years, some films have had great success with that, and then others have had less success. Let's just say, and so I think it depends on a lot of factors. First off, Eric, there's also some films that don't do this run at all.
Well, we'll get to that in a
And
minute.
we'll
I
get
want
to
to
that in
talk
a minute, but
specifically about
yeah,
the festival
no,
run.
I think that it's a good thing. Particularly, we've seen with Neon over the last couple of years with their can titles that carry over and have already played there, and then they go to Telluride, Toronto, New York, the regionals, even AFI. It can build passion, and that's been the number one thing that's been such a driving factor for Oscar voters over the last couple of years. Is just movies that stick around, that are positive, that have great reviews, that audiences love. um, you can tell by the success or the intrigue of a movie when people are turned away from those festivals. I think of the lines at Parasite being reported out of Telluride that people couldn't get in. I was thinking about Anatomy of a Fall. I was thinking about last year with Nora. And I, I think that that could be very successful. I think also, though, it could be kind of detrimental at times because if a studio has 3 or 4 or 5 films, like a Netflix, like a Neon and A24, this is a good test to see which of these films before they start putting the big campaign forward is their film. And I think of a couple of years ago as Netflix as a perfect example, thinking about a Knives Out mystery of that year in 2022, when they didn't really know what their film was. I mean, it started off as Bardo, and then it ended up being All Quiet on the Western Front, and they had like 3 films in between. They seem to have once again like that factor with Jake Kelly is going to play at certain places, Frankenstein's going to play at certain places. So I think they kind of learned a little bit from that mistake. And those are 2 giant titles with big movie stars, with Academy friendly directors. And I think that that's also the other thing that factors in is who's attached to these things, when are they screening, um, where they're screening is important too. Like Frankenstein's just doing Venice and TIFF. Jake Kelly seems to potentially do like 3, 4, like you're saying, Eric. I don't think it means oversaturation, but I do think that these studios have to position these movies in a way of these are our top priorities and we need people to see them. But then their second or third choices actually I find to be really interesting because how do you keep a movie if you're like Netflix, a movie like Train Dreams, a movie, what happens to a Knives Out movie when you have these two big contenders that have benefited from studios having not that many films in the race. So I find it to be really fascinating. I don't think that, you know, a movie though nowadays needs to fully play every single festival, but I do think that it's very beneficial to certain films, especially the streamers, because this is the only opportunity that most voters or people are going to see these on the big screen if you're not in a major city either. So there's a lot of factors with it, but I don't have a problem with it. I think honestly, the more the merrier. Get those people out there, get them engaged, because then people will know that you're excited about it. You'll see that the studios are excited about it. And then they'll have the second run, which I always think is more important than the festival run. The second run where it's in that October, November, December time where everybody's doing Q&As and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And Sophia, what are your thoughts on movies that have a lot of festival appearances
Mhm.
versus some that have very few curated ones?
Well, I think one of the contenders or films that's emerged that's been sort of surprising with how many festival appearances it's going to have is If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. That's one that maybe at the beginning of the season I didn't necessarily see as something that would appear everywhere, but Sundance, Berlin, Telluride possibly, TIFF, New York. Fantastic Fest. It's going to be really everywhere. And what's
That's wild.
interesting to me with this one, in thinking about the awards conversation a little bit and the priorities of A24, but also the actress race, is that when we saw Die My Love at Cannes, a lot of people talked about how Rose Byrne and Jennifer Lawrence are in maybe similar types of films or giving performances that tackle similar themes. I haven't seen If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You yet, but Die My Love has virtually disappeared from the season and the festival circuit, just really going to Cannes. And I've heard and read that Lynn Ramsey is back in the editing room with that film, but it's interesting how I think a film that's going to appear everywhere can sort of possibly usurp another if similar themes might be in both of those films. I also think the overexposure factor is real with certain films too. People can get really tired of them if they're picking up awards places, or if they don't appear at a festival, it can be the exciting new thing that comes later that, people might be tired of talking about a lot of the festival films and something new will come up. I always think about last year with A Complete Unknown. I don't think that film maybe would have had the awards run if it did necessarily, if it had come out at a Telluride or a TIFF, because people could have maybe not seen it as this nice surprise that they got right around the first round of voting. So I think sometimes it really depends on the film. I think I'm always more curious sometimes about the omissions and why they're not in certain places but selected in others. I'm very curious, though, I think in particular, to see two distributors and what really emerges as their top contenders, just based on what they're bringing everywhere. Those, of course, are Neon with all of those Cannes titles and where they're choosing to take them, and Netflix, of course, which Ryan already mentioned. So yeah, it's always exciting, I think, to see how the puzzle pieces really come together. It's like looking at a Tetris board, honestly, just to see where everyone fits in. But yeah, I'm curious to see who will, I think, really remain as the season continues.
Yeah, this is, I mean, obviously a factor that we follow every year, and try and read the tea leaves a little bit of what that means, because sometimes it doesn't really mean much, and we sort of infuse it with ideas and beliefs that, oh wow, the new Bradley Cooper is only playing one festival. What does that mean? Does it mean others turned it down? And those types of rumors and conversations sort of then overtake it. But I do think it's an interesting point that a film that doesn't play a lot of festivals or even any festivals then uh becomes a discovery for a voter rather than a film that they have feel now that they are forced to see because they are told this is the movie, this is the contender. And as we have seen several times from the Academy, they don't like being told what to do and what to watch. And having something that sort of everyone is seeing for the first time at the same time uh, allows them to kind of have some, like, a voice outside of the ones that are telling them what to do. But yeah, to your point about If I Had Legs, not the film I expected to be the overwhelming festival player, really out outrunning anything else, really.
Yeah.
And then just a few that are doing two, and like one international and one North American. I think that's a, a good safe bet to do that. But yeah, we are also in an era with these streamers and independents having way too many things on their plate, whether it's Mubi or Neon or A24 or Netflix. And that is something that we can pretty much see every year with a lot of assurance, uh, of not being able to spread themselves thin enough to get a lot for everybody. It's not it has not been that successful in that.
No,
Yeah,
But
no.
it's really curious too, I think, when you look at directors and which festivals they have relationships with, because I think sometimes we can really look at that and look at their history and think, okay, well, if they have a relationship with this fest, of course they're going to be there. But then if they're not, it's even more curious. I think specifically Yorgos Lanthimos with Begonia not being at New York Film Festival. That to me was a shocker. I think I expected that first to be in the main slate, like Poor Things was, or to be in Spotlight at least, because he even brought his short film to New York Film Festival. So when Begonia isn't there and you hear, I think, I don't know, rumblings of it being possibly too weird. I don't really care about that. And I don't think New York cares about that, especially compared to other film festivals. It makes you wonder what Focus is doing necessarily, or what that film will be like and what its life will look like in the awards conversation.
I think you just have to look at that trailer to understand exactly what you're going to get there. No, I'm not. That's not a slap at that, but it's just like, you know, would that audience rather watch the two new Linklater films or Begonia? You know what I mean? In like McNamara's films with Lanthimos have been they're more, I guess, in the vein of traditional sense in terms of Lanthimos's filmography, The Favorite and Poor Things, and then like Kinds of Kindness and Killing of a Sacred Deer. And I think that that falls into that category, and I think that that's what we can expect for Lanthimos fans. That's great because then they love to see that. And but in terms of an awards campaign, that I think that the writing's on the wall when you say that. When New York, which you're to your point, Sophia, is like very, very, they're very much they're like Venice. They're very much in the bed of their favorite directors and they love to showcase their films. And for them to not have that film in their slate is very telling. I want to go back to your original premise here just for real quick, Eric. I would hope that, studios, my hope every year is that they learn the lessons of the past, in order to then shape the landscape of the films that they have in the current year coming up. And a movie that I think a lot about in terms of how to build anticipation, campaign, award strategy, and everything is a movie that we at this time had no idea what it was even about, and that was last year, and that was The Brutalist, which is a movie that is this 3 hour, has an intermission epic on VistaVision. And Brady Corbet was able to get A24 and these studios and these festivals to screen it the proper way and build up anticipation from Venice to TIFF to New York to the regionals, and then carry a campaign for that when a lot of people thought, oh, it's Sing Sing. Oh, it's this film. Oh, it's that film. And I think that that's great because it doesn't overstay its welcome. The format itself makes people want to see it and clamor to see it, coming off of Oppenheimer the year before and showing it, everything being about film and film projection. And I just wish that maybe some of these studios would learn a little bit about, like, have these movies come out there, strategically place it, because they didn't play everywhere. Corbet in that movie didn't go everywhere. He didn't do every single Q&A, but that felt very organic. Honora felt very organic. And I feel like some of these studios, their answer is, let's just throw everything at everybody. And that can be super overwhelming. But then to that point, Netflix had one film last year, really, that they had in contention in Amelia, and that played everywhere. And whether we liked the film or not, audiences really liked it. It won a TIFF audience prize, it won Cannes prize, it won a ton of European awards. You know what I mean? It got a ton of nominations, and wasn't it the leader of nominations? If
It
I'm not
was the
mistaken?
leader,
And so,
and the record holder for a non-English language film.
exactly, which I mean says a lot about that film at the time, pre-controversy.
Says a lot
So
about voters.
it does,
Mhm.
but they still wanted to see it. And
Mhm.
even a place like New York wanted it, but they didn't want Begonia. So what does that say?
I don't know. Well, but I think that's going to take us right into the actual Oscar talk. And now that we have all of this information of what is playing what, how much that information has changed or augmented where our Oscar thoughts are. And I actually want to start with the casting category as the new category of the season. I think all eyes are going to be on this category, both for how the nominations are broken down, and then how we think voters will look at this category. Will they look at it sort of like the SAG cast category is a de facto best picture? Will they look at it more for just a wide diversity of cast, or a very small cast that's like perfectly cast? Let's see how many times I can say cast on this podcast.
Cast.
Because like
Podcast.
if we looked at last year, obviously something like Wicked would be here. Anora would be here. It was in the SAG cast category for
The
for
BAFTA
people.
category. It
So
won.
and won BAFTA. And that's kind of that's it. That's a great way, and BAFTA has had a casting category for a little while, so we do have that to kind of go off of a little more so than Casting Society, because they have so many categories. It's hard to really nail that down. But I want to get an idea from you guys what you think the top contenders are here. I think, like I said, Wicked for Good has to be a major player here because it's the first year for it. Sinners, being the film that it is, should definitely be here. And then I think Sentimental Value becomes, this is sort of like where when Oscar nominations come out and we see the real tea leaves, where branches are. Like if it has an editing nomination, like, oh, okay, it's serious. This is going to have a little bit of that in there too. So what else are you thinking of each with this category? Brian, what do you think?
Well, I would hope that it is not the de facto SAG ensemble kind of carry over from there. I would actually be extremely disappointed. I think that this is a place where you could make some really bold risks and that aren't necessarily in a best picture category. Like, I am not saying that this is an Oscar movie, but hear me out, okay? This movie this past weekend, Weapons, is a perfect example of a casting category. And the reason why I say that is because Zach Cregger and this entire cast had an entirely different set of actors. The only one that carried over was Austin Abrams. and how this movie would have looked totally different if Pedro Pascal was playing the Josh Brolin character and everybody having that discussion online. That's the kind of thing. Little things like that is, I think, a totally legitimate thing if they have a bake off for this thing or they can provide information on the casting of this film. That's something that should play more of a factor than, oh, well, sentimental value and Sinners are the top two contenders, so let's just put them in there. I'm not sliding those films in terms of their casting because I think that those are phenomenal casted films, but I don't think they're necessarily as challenging as some sort of processes can be. Actors dropping out, the production, the budget should be considered for these things as well. I hope it's not just like, well, that person's winning best actress or best actor, and so they got the casting right. Because that would be, because if they do that, then something like Springsteen would be in consideration because Elvis was in consideration for that. I believe Complete Unknown was a SAG Ensemble nomination because of that, because of the casting of that cast. The Holdovers is, I actually think, a really great winner from BAFTA a couple of years ago, of a great collection of actors and discoveries inside of it as well too. I think having young performers, I think having discoveries is key to this category, and ones that I would hope are up there. I mean, if we're talking about cast, then Jay Kelly's definitely got to be up there, I guess it seems like, because of just the sheer volume of people that are in this thing. Frankenstein's an interesting one because you can talk about it being like the middle ground of both, where they had to replace certain actors, but they also have a large ensemble as well there too. But then, I mean, something like A Simple Accident or The Secret Agent, those international features, I think most people don't know who a lot of those casts are, and so they could be discoveries for people. I don't know. Those are like some of the films. I know those sound very best picture-y, but like, I mean, personally, the weapons argument is one that I would love to consider if they're taking this category seriously. And to your point, Eric, we're not going to know what BAFTA's thoughts are on this, because
Yes,
the fact
because
that the big news, and I know you were probably going to mention this later, but I think that it works here, is that we're going to know the BAFTA nominations after the Oscar nominations for the first
mhm.
time in years.
Yeah, like a whole
And
week later.
yeah, a whole week. So
Close. Yeah.
that will give us I guess a tip of the hat as to where this category is going for that side of the international voters. But SAG Ensemble, I think, is going to play a bigger factor if those nominations are out. So, it's kind of like how we last year were figuring out actor wins, which one goes
Hmm.
first, because it's all on the mind of a voter in the process of that.
Yeah. And Sophia, what are your thoughts on the casting category of what we might see?
I think the biggest thing really is aligning it just in how I'm thinking about it now with SAG Ensemble. Certainly, those options like Sinners and Wicked for Good and even Wake Up Dead Man feel like possibilities just because of the sheer amount of well-known, celebrated people in those casts. But also, I'm thinking about how if this is the first year for this category with the Academy, they might also, with when it comes to a bake-off and with a branch, they might be looking at leaders in their industry and wanting to recognize them with the first Oscar. So if you think about names like Nina Gold, for instance, she is the casting director for Jay Kelly alongside Douglas Abel, I believe. So maybe they'll want to make sure that she's recognized. Or, I'm also thinking Sentimental Value is a really good call out too, because Avi Kaufman is also working on that film. And I also wouldn't count out Marty Supreme here because I think Marty Supreme, with just the number of like background actors and bit players that I know are
Kevin
attached to that
O'Leary.
film.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get to that. But I think there, if you're thinking too of just also with what BAFTA does, BAFTA doesn't necessarily go with the SAG Ensemble winner. They go with an individual acting winner. So maybe we could see the Academy go a similar way. But I think it's exciting just that we're in the first round of this. I could also see One Battle After Another making a play too here. The blend of talented veterans, movie stars, and new discoveries, and that casting director being PTA's longtime collaborator here, I think that's also a good story.
I was
Yeah, I
literally
think
the next film I was going to mention.
my approach to this category is going to be a little bit less best picture oriented or specific, and more to your point of this is the first, and the opportunity for these branches to be giving awards to people that have not gotten them and are titans in this industry. Not to mention the fact that this is a category like visual effects and sound where we are very likely to see the same person get more than one nomination year after year. You mentioned Nina Gold, definitely. Francine Maisler, absolute icon. You mentioned Marty Supreme. Jennifer Vendetti has like 4 films. Nina Gold too. There is so much potential for a lot of this to be a little bit name checky, not exactly Diane Warren style, but after a decade of this category, we're going to know just how insular a branch that it could be. Um, the weapons call out is a great one. Allison Jones is the casting director for Barbie and Lady Bird and several television shows. And that crossover of film and TV even opens the door even more.
That's massive, I think.
And
Yeah.
if Amy Madigan can win supporting actress, which we're going to start manifesting, that can be the acting win that goes alongside.
Do we okay, that's actually a really, I know that Sophia it's a great joke, but do
Yeah.
we also then believe then that as the season goes on, when we're predicting and we're seeing winners and stuff, do we think that this category, kind of like BAFTA, has to then carry over? And then if that's the case, does that then carry over to Best Picture? Because if it is, if you're talking about celebrating this person, I mean, last year that was Honora, right, at BAFTA, but then it was SAG Ensemble was Conclave. So what would then that look like? We'd have to. So Eric, you're saying look at the person, not the film, because
No, I'm
when it gets
saying
to the Academy, it's going to be
no,
about the film.
in the nomination stage, that
Yeah.
I'm looking at the actual casting directors and
Okay.
what I think that branch is going to want to do, especially in this first year.
Mm.
And then, in the subsequent, 5 years and 10 years, we'll have patterns, and we'll be able to understand the branch's focus and
But we can
intentions.
most certainly predict then that like the award for a win standpoint, it'll be like most Oscars, where if you're the closest film to Best Picture nominee or even a winner, then you're most likely the one to walk home with the statue.
Potentially, but I mean, the SAG cast, like you just mentioned, Conclave, we have plenty of examples
No,
where
I
the
know.
cast winner there is not representative of what's going to win Best Picture.
No, that's very true.
Yeah.
That's why
So
it would have
it's
been
puzzle
interesting.
pieces.
Yeah, that's why it would have been very interesting to actually have this category last year because of that split. And I feel like there will be splits, and it will be kind of like how we've judged pitcher
If we
and
had
what's
this
a
category
precursor.
last year, Sean Baker would have 5 Oscars.
Yeah,
So
it's just insane.
I think that's where this
Yeah,
would be.
that's nuts, So
So,
yeah.
but because Sophia mentioned Amy Madigan, I want to go over to supporting actress. We're not covering all categories in this. These are going to be, short podcasts to kind of just push us through. But yes, obviously in this last week, uh, the drum for Amy Madigan has been banged quite loudly.
Mostly by people
And
here.
yes, definitely by people here. uh you know there's a cake, there's a shirt, there's really
There's
everything.
everything.
Everything is there. But I do want to look at her chances, in the context of everything else, and with a bit of reality to it, and not completely just fandom, which is great and it's really really fun, and the heat of it right now is absolutely crazy. But I want to look at a likelihood, at a realistic uh, element of it. And when you look at this year's supporting actress lineup, I think the names that we're considering, at least at this stage, are like both Wunmi Masako and Haley Steinfeld from Sinners, Emily Blunt in The Smashing Machine, Laura Dern and Jay Kelly, Gwyneth Paltrow and Marty Supreme, Iowa Debris and After the Hunt, although my feelings about that movie are getting less and less enthusiastic by the
Only for those
day.
the sun quotes on the poster.
Emma Stone in Begonia, if she goes supporting, I think she will. And then also both Elle Fanning and Inga Ibstad Lilius in Sentimental Value. Lots of possibilities here. And then where does Amy Madigan fit in that as a very early, like in that entire list, even though we have festival screenings, only Sinners is a theatrical release already. So that's kind of what gave Sinners the last few months its standing with so many people, is that it is the early release. It is a film that you can hitch your predictions on because it has been seen, and these other films have not. Now Weapons has been, and we have this opportunity for a veteran actress to earn her first nomination in 40 years. She will beat Helen Hayes if she is nominated for the length between nominations. Sorry, Judd Hirsch. And I don't know. That's this is something that is so entirely dependent on the studio being able to properly capitalize on this and when to do it. It's a weird time because there is no awards campaigning really happening right now. We are in between festivals, and this would mean that Warner Brothers New Line would have to really step it up during award season, and they have several contenders in this category already. So looking at it from that perspective, I think there is certainly a possibility for a passion vote to exist and to be able to start hitting the campaign trail in November and December in a way that's very, very real. But I do also think that Warner Brothers would be foolish to not do the exact same thing with Sinners. So with that, Sophia, what do you think Amy Madigan's actual chances are now and in December, January?
So the first reason why this is hard for me is Ruth Gordon is my all-time favorite supporting actress winner in the category's history. And that performance is, as mini cast of it, is very much, I mean, Aunt Gladys she is cut from the same cloth as Minnie Castevet. And if you have this idea, right, of it has been done before. We have seen a case where we've had horror performances, similar characters win an Oscar in this category. I think though, Warner Brothers having multiple real contenders really complicates things. I think they have enough on their hands with Sinners and what happens with One Battle After Another when that comes out. And I don't know, I worry that that would push Amy Madigan maybe to the background. But what I do think is possible for her is a fun passion vote at major critics groups. Like I could see her being a critics winner at regional groups or even LA or New York, really going for it. They like to think outside of the box and make a statement and go with something that's really exciting and fun and different and not just what we might consider to be a chalk pick. But I think that does need to happen for her if she wants to actually, make a run with the industry because it is such an out there, different type of performance. I think a lot of the other movies also that you mentioned will have to fade, or those performances from the movie will have to be the ones that aren't the ones that are recognized and celebrated for it to happen. Because when you're talking about things like Sentimental Value or Jay Kelly or Marty Supreme, we're thinking about films that could have multiple acting nominations or even potential wins. So it's hard to see sometimes one of those contenders, right, fall out in favor of what feels like a passion pick or something that's really outside the box. I'm hoping for it because it's early, right? But I don't know. I'll try to be optimistic.
And Ryan, what are your thoughts on that same question?
I think she can totally get in. I don't see why she couldn't, because I'm just going to use Eric's July predictions here as just a gauge for supporting actress, and this is the top 10. So Emma
Yeah, because
Stone and
I haven't done August yet.
yes, so Emma Stone and Begonia. That movie's showing up at like maybe two festivals, and we're questioning as to why earlier. Why isn't that showing up more? And there might be fatigue. And the last time Only the Most movie came out, it didn't. It went to Cannes, and then it went to theaters, and then it disappeared. Iowa Debris. That movie continues every single day after The Hunt to look like this year's next contender for that one show where it doesn't get nominated for anything, and then they talk about it. Gwyneth Paltrow, if she's anywhere to the level of Adina Menzel and Uncut Gems, she's not getting in because she would have like 5 seconds of time on that screen. And it's a big sprawling ensemble that will most likely, I think, just be focused on Chalamet's character and his journey throughout that film. Laura Dern, she's part of a giant ensemble. We can assume that she's going to play a big part, but it seems like it's mostly Sandler and Clooney that be the focal point of that film. Glenn Close, sorry, Kevin Jacobson, I don't see that happening. No other Knives Out film has ever got nominated for anything. Why would we start now? Emily Blunt, we all know my thoughts on Emily Blunt. I do actually think that that's a legitimate thing, but also that movie could be divisive, and also it could flop and it just not be a thing. The Sentimental Value duo, I do agree with Sophia. That's, I think, one of those two could make it in here. I think more Elle Fanning is more likely on the table at this point. I do not believe in the Sinners um, duo in this category. That is, they will get a SAG Ensemble nomination, and they will be at every dinner. And Haley Steinfeld will have Josh Allen there, her husband, and it'll be great to see him. And their red carpet outfits will be wonderful. But they're not getting anywhere near this category. Ariana Grande for Wicked for Good, maybe. She was nominated last year, but the second act of that musical sucks. So, we'll have to see what the new songs add to that. No, I'm being serious. Like, we'll have to see what the new songs add to that, and if that adds to her overall performance, if that's still there. Sophia mentioned One Battle After Another. We have to see what the role of those female characters are. I mean, I trust PTA. He makes really fascinating, great female characters, but he also did that with Licorice Pizza and did not get that nomination for Alana Haim there. Um, America Ferrera, The Lost Bus, Jennifer Lopez, The Kiss of the Spider Woman, Sissy Spacek and Die My Love, because that movie's just dead on arrival. Laura Dern in this thing on. A movie that's playing one of them, Michaela Cole, Mother Mary, if that movie even exists this year. Felicity Jones in Train Dreams, if that movie can get past Jay Kelly and Frankenstein. So what I'm saying here is that we're talking about 15, 16 names that all have cases just as strong to get in, but just as many cases to get out and be forgotten. And most likely, half of these performances will be forgotten after they premiere at their festivals. So she does have that. And this movie is a hit. And she is being memed. And she will be the focal point for many people at Halloween this year, including Erik Anderson himself. And I think the one thing that would be great is screening specifically focused on her and Q&As and her talking about the film. The one problem that this movie has had in terms of its little discourse is Zach Cregger's inability to want to engage with conversation. I think if Amy Madigan, who is playing literally the personification of evil in that movie, has interesting Q&As and almost like a Francis Fisher-esque type of campaign behind the scenes for her, she could totally get a lot of people to want to see a movie that a lot of people are passionate about. And does do I think that then she could get in? You bet, because she's been an Oscar nominee before, and many people might not remember that. And so maybe they might want to, have, oh my God, that would be such a historic moment. I do think people see that a little bit, not all the time, but I do think some of the time that happens.
Well, and one
So,
interesting thing about the
Yep.
weapons press is that Madigan was not a part of it.
yeah, because
So,
she was the secret.
yeah,
So now she gets to come and be the
Mm-hmm.
full,
yeah.
she gets to carry on that personification of evil through the award season and
I think it's a great
take out,
benefit.
and I would just love if somebody just like let her had a bowl of water and like hair of all the other girls and they just went to town. Like there's so much fun you can have actually
Just
with
don't bring
this.
up Elia Kazan and you're fine.
Exactly. But there's just a lot of fun you can have, I think, on a campaign trail with this, and it be
Yes.
specifically targeted. I think if you targeted it original screenplay and her, I think that's the route, for that movie. If it gets into picture, which it's not, but like if it did, it's pure on passion. And that's what this would be. So, and I mean, like you could also tie her into a makeup nomination because the makeup in that movie is insane and it's fun. And it goes back to the casting conversation about that too. Like that movie, you wouldn't think about it, but like if there were passionate enough voters, it could be a sneaky little contender in there. And does that steal a little bit of the momentum from Sinners? Maybe. I don't know. Two horror movies competing from the same studio in a year is a lot. And then, of course, they've got a PTA movie with Leonardo DiCaprio that they've already started talking about, and had the great Esquire magazine conversation between Leo and PTA, and it's
It was
already
a wank
beginning.
fest,
It
but
was
okay.
Quick,
wonderful.
quick point on Amy Madigan. Do you guys know who called this the performance of the year already?
Well, this is Joey Gentili written all over it.
Joey Gentili's alter ego, Sarah Paulson, called it the
Yes.
Oh,
performance of the year. And an
Yep.
well
It was.
anointing by her is like
Mm,
Frances Fisher sometimes. So
mhm.
maybe she can work her
did you get
her
Holland
bowl of
Taylor out
water
there?
magic.
You know,
Exactly. Those screenings are
those
going to be are
four
being set up now.
those 4 p.m. screenings so Holland can get to bed by 8, you know,
Oh my God, Ryan.
Just like me.
Wow.
just like Sophia.
Jeez. Yeah, but no, I those are all salient points. I think there is potential really for anything, and that's why having this conversation right now before the onslaught of the dozens of films that we're going to be seeing in the next couple of weeks, uh, and how those change where we think things are and where they're going. And I think we're going to wrap there for our Oscar talk today. So we just did casting and supporting actress. I think that's actually pretty good.
You don't want to talk
Uh,
about Marty Supreme trailer?
no, no, we already talked about Marty Supreme. It's a great
Okay,
trailer. It's a really great trailer.
it's really good.
Mhm.
Really looking forward to it. Definitely looks like a no festival film that's just getting a Christmas release, which is good.
Mhm.
Let it be. Just let it be that. Let it be discovered. But yeah, we'll have more to talk about in the coming weeks for sure, and definitely with our Telluride preview next week. So unless you have any final closing thought, Ryan, do you?
I think we should. I think since we're doing the prediction show, it's only we talk about
No,
casting and stuff.
no,
We
we're
should
not going
we
to do
should
a
put
whole
our
nother category.
we should
No,
do our money where our mouth is and just a quick what we think's winning best picture right now. I think we should do it.
no. I'll stick with sentimental value.
Okay, Sophia.
One battle after another. Let's go.
And I'm gonna go with one battle after another right now. Put it on the
Oh, I
record.
thought we were each going to have three different choices. That would have
You know
been so
what?
much more fun.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
All right,
But
that's
I
cool.
think those are the two.
All right. Well, there we go. All right. And with that, Ryan, please tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, I don't,
For what reasons I don't
for,
know, but
I
like,
don't know. That seemed like they want to
that seemed
like,
really stalkery.
yeah, it
But
was
yeah,
very much like I need to get restraining order out. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, right, McQuade77. You can find all my work here at awardswatch.com. We've got a lot of festival coverage that will be coming up. We'll have Venice, we'll have Telluride, TIFF, New York, every single place. We will be covering it at awardswatch.com. So that's best place to get all that is the newsletter. Sign up for it on the website, iTunes 5 stars, Spotify, all that great stuff. If you like podcasts, Director Watch. This week, we are talking about Elle, and next week, to tease that, we are talking about Benedetta with Sophia. It's a wild last 2 weeks of the Verhoeven series. If you've been listening to it, it's been a wonderful ride as we end summer season, I guess, and we get into the fall and start talking about our new director that I will tease next week.
and Sophia, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Sophia_Sim on Twitter, Sophia Sim at Blue Sky, where I will be talking endlessly about Daniel Day-Lewis in Anemone, since we got a still of that this week, and it's all I can think about now.
I was
His
surprised she
beautiful
was able
profile.
to speak today on this podcast and thinking about that specific
Can't
image all
wait.
week.
Can't wait until I have a full meltdown on this pod about Best Actor, whenever that may come. You can also find me on Letterboxd at Sophia Sim. You can find my podcast Oscar Wilde wherever you listen to podcasts, and reviews, interviews, and more festival coverage at AwardsWatch.
Excellent. And yes, as always, you can find me on awardswatch.com, awardswatch on all socials except for Twitter, which is awards_watch. And yes, keep an eye out for the newsletter. And if you see a newsletter from Deadline or Gold Derby that says Awards Watch, let me know. Let me know, because that is not Awards Watch. And with that, I thank everybody for listening. Bye-bye.